Operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the Midwest and Great Plains Drought Update. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. Ms. Bethany Perry, you may begin your conference.
Thank you, Shannon. Hi, everybody. Welcome today. We've got Dennis Toddy will be our presenter from South Dakota as the state climatologist. And Dennis, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Bethany. We are in the midst, well, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have everybody with us. We're in the midst of a lot of things that we would not expect to see, or I did not expect to see this spring. Let's put it that way. As I look out my window and see snow piling on top of several inches of snow already existing, we have several people who have indicated they would not be with us today because they're dealing with flooding issues, another thing I did not expect to see, along with delayed agricultural activity because of snow or wet or cold conditions, all of which are providing very interesting situations for us this spring. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our situation right now. We have, first off, I guess this is the, we'll acknowledge everybody who's been part of this. Lots of people have contributed to it. I just get to be lucky enough to be the one presenting it. Starting off with our slide today, because it's not showing up in some other places, this is the AHAPS precipitation map from this morning, radar and ground-based combination product with total precipitation over the last 24 hours ending 12Z this morning, basically 7 o'clock in Central Time, 6 o'clock in Mountain Time. And you see the impressive amounts of precipitation that occurred yesterday across eastern Iowa, northern Illinois, northern Missouri, and on into to Michigan, on the order of 3 to 4. I think there may be some 5-inch plus amounts that appeared because of this, and are leading to a variety of flooding issues in an area where we didn't expect to see flooding this year, but also relieving some of the dryness issues that are still existing with it. So some very impressive amounts here. Let's see, there we go. Okay, this reminding people this is a collaborative climate services activity among state climatologists. Doug Cluck from NOAA, John Ives from National Weather Service, other state climatologists, the regional climate centers, NDMC, and USDA have all contributed pieces to this. Reminder, the next one will be next month, May 16th at 1 p.m., and they will be ongoing after that. Dates are not set, but they will continue after that. Potentially, if conditions need to change, we will change them, but they will be ongoing. Access to the future webinars and other information are on the drought.gov site, and a reminder the operator will come on for questions at the end. So our agenda for today is we're going to talk about what we thought was spring, well, kind of an extension of winter still going on in current conditions, some of the impacts related to ag, water, fire, and others, a little bit of outlooks, and then we'll get to questions and comments. You can see what's going on outside my window this morning, where we have lots of snow, and we're better off in some places that are further north where we have much more snow. A picture is stolen from a high school friend of mine. This is from Numa in southern Iowa. You can see where we had very dry conditions. We have almost lakefront property. And then just something else fun on top, too. Most people may not have heard. We had a significant icing event. And this is ice. You can see kind of a blurry image, but ice that is built up on a branch of a tree from last week in Sioux Falls that has caused significant problems. Okay, just a kind of a recap of conditions that we are experiencing right now. This just came out, the March ranks, statewide temperature ranks, and you can see the significant cold pattern that we have been in, but an interesting long wave trough pattern where we see a trough that's been entrenched over the Midwest, the eastern part of the southeast part of the U.S., leading to colder temperatures, while over the west, in Arizona, Nevada, and California, we have warmer conditions where the ridge has been set up. So the rankings, you can see where we are or have been for the month of March. Top 10 coldest in the southeast, and then top 20 to 30, depending on where in various states in the Midwest Central region. You compare that with what we saw last year, which has, I think, been part of our issue this year, is people are remembering how warm and ideal it was last March, at least from a dryness and pleasant perspective, where we had record warm in the March, for March. Been quite of a contrast this year in the conditions we've seen. March precipitation, there's been this impression that we've been extremely wet during March, and certain states have been somewhat wet. Minnesota coming in as above normal wetness, but large parts of our region really not that wet overall for March. Part of it has been the perception because of carryover snowfall that's still with us and some other precipitation issues, but really not that wet overall from a rankings perspective. The wettest location obviously being Minnesota, and on the dry side, several states, Kansas and Wyoming coming in as fifth driest, and some eastern states somewhat drier for the month of March. But that's not the whole issue, because we are in the middle of April right now. So if you want to look over the last 30 days, our departure from average temperature on the upper left-hand side for the last 30 days, this colder than average pattern continues, especially in the northern plains, upper Midwest, where we're ranging from 10 to over 15 degrees below average over this time period, specifically sitting over the area where there has been snowfall. We'll talk about that here in just a second. And then percent of average precipitation on the right-hand side, with quite variable conditions also. We'll zoom in up and take a little bit more of the precip here. But much of the central part of the Corn Belt being wetter than average over the last 30 days. An interesting area along the Ohio Valley that is running somewhat drier over that time period. And then actually in the Dakotas, Nebraska, kind of a mixed bag depending on where you are, being wet or dry. Some of the temperature issues that are related to this, obviously delayed planting, delayed agricultural activity further south in the Corn Belt because of colder soils, wetter conditions now delaying things. This is starting to shorten the growing season a little bit. This is not a major issue just yet, but for those not as versed in the ag sector, people want to get in as early as they can, because there's a pretty good relationship between earlier planting and how soon you get earlier planting and what you end up with for yields. As you continue to delay, you start to lose some yield as time goes along. Also, some issues that are starting to show up, and not overall, unlike last year where we had very warm early conditions, we were concerned about late freeze. The cold has really kept most things from breaking dormancy, but there was also a post by somebody on Facebook showing landscaping materials, plants that people had out in the various parking lot stores with some of the major stores. With the cold conditions going on right now, there could be some damage to those. So there could be some loss from a landscaping perspective because of these flowers and other plants that are out for purchase. Looking at a little bit more on the precipitation over the last 30 days, the upper left-hand side is central region total precipitation over the last 30 days, how much is really on the ground, and then, or has occurred over that time period, and the departure from average on the lower right-hand side. This does not include all of that precipitation I showed on the first map from AHAPS, because this would only go through yesterday, so it would not necessarily include precipitation amount, all that precipitation amounts. So you can see in the upper left-hand side, parts of Iowa, into Missouri, Wisconsin, Michigan have had 5 inches plus in some places, whereas you get down into southeastern Kansas, parts of Colorado, up into North Dakota and Montana, we're dealing with amounts in some cases still 2 inches or less. If you compare how that compares to average for this time of year, obviously those heavier precipitation areas are running above average. Parts of the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Montana are somewhat below average. Parts of Kansas still quite a bit below average in that area I mentioned earlier, from southern Missouri along the Ohio River Valley, that is running several inches below average for this time of year. So that may be a positive in the near term for them being able to get some agricultural activity done, but they will need to follow up with additional precipitation as we go along. Included in that precipitation is also some very large late season snows. For those of you not from the Northern Plains, having snow this time of year is not that inordinate a situation. Having the amounts that we are and several snowfall events is somewhat unusual for this this late in the year. Excuse me. This is the from the No Risk Group in NOAA, their snow depth map from yesterday, showing areas of North Dakota, northern Minnesota, sitting on the order of 16 to 20 inches or more of precipitation. But then you can also see snow on the ground into the western South Dakota, western Nebraska, out into Wyoming and parts of Montana, where the snowfall is a benefit. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. The other thing to point out with this is not only is there a significant amount of precipitous snow here, there's a lot of water involved in the area of North Dakota and northern Minnesota, where we're talking 4 to 8 inches of SWE in that area. So lots of water that has to be melted. You'll also notice up in Canada some significant amounts of snow still in Canada. It's going to be delaying their planting activities also, and it's going to have an impact on our climate until we get some overall warmer temperatures. We'll talk about that in the Outlook section. Lots of records available, basically individual records, but there are also some records in the way of snowfall totals for the month. Rapid City Airport stations had the snowiest April on record at 34 inches because of the large event they had last week. Bismarck, North Dakota, snowiest April at 21.5 inches. Bismarck North also had the snowiest single day ever. This is any time of year at 17.3 inches on April 14th. Numerous other daily records. Aberdeen, South Dakota is the third snowiest April currently, still accumulating up there. And just to receive a note from Greg Spoden, pointing out from Fargo, Fargo has now had April has now been their snowiest month of the year. Not unheard of again, but certainly not something you expect to see on a regular basis. Now, there are some pluses and minuses to the snow. As I mentioned, the snow, especially in the Plain States, has been very welcome. Late winter, early spring snows are quite common and are actually welcomed out there, especially on rangeland, because most of that moisture that will often enter the ground because the ground is no longer frozen out in that area. So the snow is welcome. It is also welcome because from a fire standpoint, those areas that are still where there was not green up, we still had very dry surfaces. This will help the green up and help the fire issues for the short term. We'll talk about longer term a little bit later. Also, from a calving and lambing perspective, lots of people are finishing calving and lambing at this time of year. The heavier snow is a hardship for them. Fortunately, it doesn't seem like there have been too many losses, but it has been a hardship on the farmers and ranchers out there. But they, again, do appreciate the moisture and are not turning their noses up at the moisture they're receiving because of this. The other issue that is going to be because of this is the likelihood of flood areas. We're looking at the potential for flood or flood forecasts from the Weather Service offices. The issue we're seeing right here is, oops, let's go back again here. This is potential flood forecast on the Red River in the middle part of your screen. In the area just to the left of that is on the Cheyenne, and then the upper left-hand side is on the Souris River. Areas that are marked in purple, the dots in purple, are river gauges where there is a greater than 50% chance of major flood event. Ones that are marked in red have a greater than 50% chance of moderate flooding. So we are going to have some flooding up in this area. Notes from Adnan, the state climatologist up there, was remarking this, I think maybe the latest melt-off in the 100-plus years of data they have, and expecting a very major flood event. How it comes to pan out, we'll see as time goes along, but because of the late accumulation and the lack of melt-off that's going to be occurring. The Souris and the Milk River, these are likely more minor events at this time, pending additional precipitation. I also don't mention the James here on the lower left-hand side. Some of the snow is going to melt and run down the James River, where it's likely going to be a minor flood event. The James has its own set of issues related to flooding, we can talk about it another time. Where we're looking now, as we're looking out in the west, we're looking at a different set of issues related to snow and water, leading to what's going into the Missouri River and the potential for the river season and recovery of the reservoir system on the Missouri. Comparing where we are in the way of snow course data on the left from last month, and the areas in green are 90 to 190% of average, so around average. Areas in yellow are 70 to 89% of average. On the right-hand side, comparing showing where we are currently. Largely no big changes from last month, some small changes. The only real point of changing is in the area of northern Wyoming, where especially those that go into you can see it goes into the Cheyenne River of South Dakota or into the Belle Fourche River, much above average snow in those areas because of the recent snowfall events, so that will help out those systems. What this is going to mean for the Missouri River, I'm going to turn over to Kevin Stamm of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Omaha, and he'll talk about this.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. So this figure right here, it is a depiction of the mountain snowpack in the upper Missouri River Basin in two reservoir reaches, which are part of the main stem system of reservoirs for the upper Missouri River. The figure on the left is the total amount of snowpack, the shaded blue, above Fort Peck Reservoir, and then on the right is the amount of snowpack from Fort Peck to Garrison. The dark red line would be the 1981 to 2010 average snowpack. So as you can see there, by comparison, in both of those reaches, the amount of mountain snow is below normal. Though we have had some recent improvement, which we will consider in our May 1 forecast. Why this is important is because about 50% of our runoff comes from mountain snowpack and precipitation, which we see come into the reservoirs in the May, June, and July time frame. Right now it's about 90% on average, and our reservoir forecast as a result of the mountain snowpack and other factors that we take into consideration is 81% of normal. That number is about 20.5 million acre-feet, and normally we would have runoff into the upper Missouri River Basin of about 25.2 million acre-feet. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the South Platte depiction of mountain snowpack. Again, you can see that the amount of snowpack above, or in the North Platte system and the South Platte, are both well below normal, but the recent snows have had some improvement. So again, the expectation would be that runoff into these basins throughout the summer will be below normal. A couple other things I'd like to mention after looking at these mountain snowpack depictions is that with the improvements that will be considered in the May 1 forecast, but we've also seen some improvements in precipitation throughout the high plains. In addition, the persistence of the snow will likely improve the forecast as we go into the May, June, July time frame. A couple final things. Would like to mention that the reservoir storage in the main stem system of reservoirs for the Missouri River is 49.2 million acre-feet. This is below the base of the annual flood control pool, so we are actually operating under drought restrictions, and so our releases from Gavin's Point are at a minimum service level. And with the rains that have been occurring well below the main stem system of reservoirs, we have been able to make some additional cuts over the last couple of weeks to further conserve some water. So hopefully with these minimum service levels and cuts to conserve water, we should be able to slowly begin to bring our reservoir back to more normal levels, but there's still a lot of progress to be made at this time. And if you have any questions about our operations, I will be available at the end of this call. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Continuing on our water discussion here, we have a comparison of the 7-day average stream flow from last month on the webinar on the left-hand side with where we are this month. The percentiles are on the bottom. Anything in the green is around what was considered near normal conditions. Areas in blue are much above normal, and black is record high. So you can see what's going on. What has really happened from where we were last month. We had, somewhat wetter conditions in Iowa and Missouri that has largely spread into Illinois, Wisconsin, and over in parts of Indiana and Ohio now. And some areas that had been running on the below normal side into Kansas and Nebraska have recovered somewhat. We're also starting to get some appearance of some of the gauge data now in the Dakotas as we've gotten away from freezing. So again, you can see where the areas have recovered some of the heavy precipitation amounts, and we're seeing that in stream flow conditions right now. Again, still have areas of Kansas and parts of the Dakotas that are still somewhat on the dry side that will continue to show that. What this is going to mean for river projections, these are from the river forecast centers. Projections for moderate to major flooding. On the left-hand side is Missouri River. The prime areas for potential flooding issues are down in the Missouri area, part of the Missouri Basin. Parts of the James and the Milk will have some minor issues also. On the upper right-hand side, the Mississippi, coincident with what we saw in the previous map, larger potential areas for flooding issues in eastern Iowa, much of Illinois, and parts of Michigan. And on the lower right-hand side, the Ohio Valley, the issues are more, I believe that's the Wabash River in western Indiana, and a few other smaller areas, but those are the major places where we're dealing with concern for flooding right now. Again, quite a shift from where we were even a few months ago and what we were looking at not too long ago. Did not expect to be seeing this amount of flooding going on as the spring goes along here. A little more of a look at ag issues, places that are with some of the overlays on drought conditions and crops that are starting to come into season right now. Parts of the U.S. hay areas that are under drought. A big improvement in this area will alleviate a little bit in some of the haying issues. The people trying to buy hay are still running into problems, are able to find it somewhat, but are paying a premium for access to hay. But you can see still a large part of the plains under various levels of drought. Even with the additional precipitation and snow coming along, that will help. Rangeland tends not to recover as quickly from drought, especially rangeland that was used very heavily. With the seriousness of the drought, I would not expect rangeland to recover as well as we would like this year. Other eastern areas have received more precipitation out of drought issues, so there will be some alleviation of some of the hay issues. Cattle areas, very similar with this. A large part of the cattle areas, and we mentioned rangeland already, under drought. And then the winter wheat areas, some of the winter wheat areas, the eastern winter wheat areas have, again, seen some of that recovery. The plains winter wheat areas still dealing with ongoing drought issues, though some recovery going on. Northwestern winter wheat areas have not had some of the issues that we've had otherwise. Looking at the NASS reports, National Ag Statistics, winter wheat conditions, winter wheat progress on the lower right-hand side, places where winter wheat is starting to make some progress. The main part is so far is down in Texas, where 21% of the winter wheat is headed. Areas further north, it's just not been warm enough for winter wheat to break dormancy and to be moving along. Conditions of winter wheat in the upper left-hand side, basically the color coding scheme, the more red you are, the worse you are. This is percent that is in good to excellent condition on the top number. So most of the eastern areas, winter wheat is listed in quite a bit of good to excellent condition, whereas most of the plains have very small percentages of good to excellent. Our own South Dakota, I believe that's a 5% listed good to excellent, and most of the rest still in very, very poor condition per reports. Other crop progress, again, very slow progress because of the cold temperatures. From a corn standpoint, only 2% of the U.S. corn has been planted, most of that in southern or far eastern areas that are not major corn growing areas. A little bit has been planted in Illinois, but still quite a bit behind. 13% of the spring wheat has been planted. In our area, Montana 6% and South Dakota 6%. Quite a bit of the oats has been planted, a more minor crop, but oats have been planted in a number of states in our area. So there is at least a little bit of progress from that standpoint. Again, part of the reason why there's been this delay in planting, this is where we are, and we have soil temperatures at 4 inches per the most recent weekly weather and crop bulletin. Typically, for small grains, we want to see temperatures above 40. So we could be, from Nebraska, you can see over, we have soil temperatures well into the 40s in pretty good situation there. Most of the 50s are further south in the Corn Belt, where the only place we've seen some progress with that. And you can see up in the area of North Dakota and parts of Minnesota, we still have frozen soil, which is leading some interesting comparisons and discussions about what's going to happen with the snow sitting on top of frozen soil. Typically, we do not expect there to be much recovery of soil moisture on frozen soils, but there are reports of where people are getting measurements in the ground of what's going on. We are getting some recovery of soil moisture on frozen soils or places where they're marginally frozen. Some of the moisture is entering the soil, and that is reflected in this model, the NLDAS model. It's an ensemble of models. Again, we don't have very many places where we have actual soil moisture measurements. It is something we need to work towards, and it would be a huge help on a collaborative climate services basis. But until we get to that point, we're working with the models. We're comparing, this is the soil moisture anomaly or difference from average in millimeters. So you divide by 25 to get inches. You can see where we're on the left-hand side compared to where we are on the right-hand side. Large parts of the plains and northern Midwest are in the area of say 2 to 4 inches below average for this time of year. Large part of the eastern part of the Corn Belt is near average, or in some places reporting slightly above average for this time of year. This is a recovery somewhat where we were even last month. The soils have melted or have thawed out. We started to get some recovery with that, especially with the heavy rainfalls we have seen. But we still have quite a bit of soil moisture capacity at depth, which people like to have going into the season as kind of their basis for some moisture in the bank as we go along. And we'll need some additional spring rains to try to recover some of that soil moisture capacity. Wrapping this all up, where we are in the current drought monitor conditions as compared to a month ago across the central region, you see the same basic areas, but when you start looking at severity, you can see large reductions in the severity across much of the area, reductions in coverage into Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Missouri, and reductions in severity mostly over the plain states where we've seen a large reduction in D4, still some D4 in Nebraska, Colorado, and western Kansas, and some reduction in the D3 areas because of the additional precipitation. Again, some of this precipitation has fallen on frozen soils, so it has limited its ability to lead to some recovery. Okay, let's branch into the outlooks here about things we can say going on for the near term as we go look what we can say going into summer, the near term, and going on into the summer period. Next 7 days, this is from NOAA, the quantitative precipitation forecast total amounts of precipitation from 7 o'clock this morning for the next week. And you can see, again, likely to get some additional precipitation from the Great Lakes down to the lower Mississippi Valley on the order of 2+, some places maybe 3 inches of precipitation. Areas further to the west, some lesser amounts. The Dakotas, some smaller amounts of precipitation possible. There does look to be another event coming through early next week. Have to keep an eye on that, whether it falls as liquid or as frozen. There's still some determinations about that, but continuing precipitation amounts look to be the case. Looking at the next 8 to 14-day time period, this would take us through the end of April and to the 1st of May. There is a bit of a change coming. Models are hinting at finally breaking up some of that ridge and getting some warmer temperatures later next week to parts of the plains, but still largely holding on to warmer than average conditions underneath the ridge out to the west, and still troughing us with cooler than average conditions throughout the main part of the Corn Belt down to the south. So we'll have to see how this works out. From a precipitation standpoint, the most likely chances for continuing above average precipitation up over the Great Lakes area, areas of Wyoming, Montana, and then down into the southern parts of the central region, below average chances for precipitation as time goes along here. Looking at the month of May, just to also release this morning the May outlook for temperature and precipitation, a bulk of area of above average, more likely above average temperature from the central to southern plains and into the southwest. You see an area over North Dakota and northern Minnesota with likely below average chances for temperature. This is largely due to existing snow cover and the snow cover continuing in Canada, which will continue to likely impact cold air masses, produce cold air masses, and keep surface temperatures cooler in that area. Most of the rest of the Corn Belt and the EC equal chances. From a precipitation standpoint, the only real area of ours is over kind of the eastern Corn Belt, where we have below average chances for precipitation. So it's not a strong indication. There are some hints on a couple of the tools from the Climate Prediction Center saying that it could be drier in that area. Given some recent precipitation, this would not be a serious issue and would allow for field work and early development of plants. So this is not such a major issue. The 3-month temperature outlook for temperature and precipitation. Precipitation on the right-hand side, there is some some small possibility of that dry area over the eastern Corn Belt continuing. We'll have to watch. It's not reflected in this map because the signals are mixed, very much mixed on this one. The more consistent area seems to be in the far western part of the plains and the northwest, where we have below average chances for precipitation, continuing in part of that area. The very consistent message, May through July and on into the summer, is with temperatures, where there seems to be a very consistent message with above average temperatures more likely as we go into late spring and summer and continuing on in the main part of summer. The northern tier of our states, that doesn't look like it's likely to be the case, but the central part of the Corn Belt further south looks like a more likely case, and we'll show you why here in just a second. These are some of the dynamical models, some of the tools that the Climate Prediction Center uses. The 6 boxes on the top are 6 different climate models, and this is jumping ahead one more time period for June, July, August. And basically the same convention, the brown or the red or something is the better likelihood for above average temperatures. And you can see pretty consistent among these models except for one. Kind of like the Sesame Street, one of these is not like the others. The NCAR model is indicating more likely cooler, but all the other models are consistent and more likely warmer than average conditions through the summer. And that is why the outlooks for May, June, July, and then June, July, August are indicating better chances for above average temperatures. We'll keep an eye on this as we go along. The potential issue for that is in places where there is not, we've not had the complete soil moisture recovery. We're going to need to have regular precipitation over those areas for ag interests to be able to keep from stress on some of the crop issues. Bringing this together in the drought outlook through the end of July, green areas have most likely chances for improvement. The hatched areas, ongoing drought, we will not be able to remove some of those drought issues because these are the most entrenched drought issues, but continuing improvement is likely in those areas. And coincident with the areas with least likely chances for precipitation, we see the brown areas with persistence with some potential development further west. So with the additional precipitation we've had and likely ongoing with decent amounts of precipitation in the outlooks, that's why we expect improvement. The plains areas, we have very serious still overall drought issues. We'll not be able to eliminate them overall. Continuation, there's not been an update to this, but last month's spring flood outlook, indicating similar areas that we showed at earlier. The Red River, the biggest issue we're looking at, and then areas from Wisconsin on the Illinois down to Mississippi down into Missouri, similar to those I saw earlier. Okay, summary, kind of summarize our current conditions. The recent heavy precipitation has really reversed drought conditions in the middle part of the Corn Belt, really changed things around. We have some ponding issues and delaying issues going on right now because of heavier precipitation. The heavier late season snows, we've had multiple impacts with that, pluses and minuses. That's obviously slowed ag issues. You know, in the parts of the Dakotas, there's not even been a hint of field work because of snow still on the ground. It has helped fire issues in the near term because it will add moisture, help green up issues, could potentially increase fire issues later on if it spurs too much development or too much growth. Then you add to the fuels if we dry out later on. So it's kind of a mixed bag in the way of fire. It will lead to more flooding, certainly on the Red, Souris, James. There's going to be some issues there because of the snowfall. Fire issues we've talked about. We'll have to wait for the seasonal changes to see how that pans out throughout the year. Certainly the near-term green up is going to be beneficial. We've really flipped Missouri River conditions. We were limited on precipitation just a few months ago, and now we're looking at some flooding issues on the Mississippi River. Again, seems to be one of the issues we're continuing to have with large-scale variability issues within seasons and between seasons. Some small improvements, as we talked about in the Missouri River Basin. Some of the snow will help out on the reservoir system. Some of the snow will end up coming in below the reservoir system, but as Kevin mentioned earlier, they've been able to pull back on some of the releases to conserve some water. Ag is slowed by wet conditions east and cold conditions overall. Moisture is very welcome in the plains area, certainly somewhat in the east also, but it is delaying them at this point. Field work is going to continue to be delayed for probably at least a week or 10 days or so because of the recent wetness issues. And we talked about some of the continued horticulture issues. Also, there could be some carryover drought issues from last year where you have some combination of maybe winter burn and dryness. One of the local hort extension people mentioned they had even put water on some of their bushes or trees, and they had lost them because of the drought from last year. Okay, summary, going ahead. We didn't talk much about El Nino, La Nina. Actually didn't talk about it at all. And that's because neutral conditions are forecast through fall of 2013, so it's a really non-issue in the way of the outlooks. Drought conditions are going to continue in the western areas because of the entrenched areas there. Even with additional precipitation, we've had a bit of area to catch up. The moisture will be helping. We are going to ease some of the drought conditions likely in the central and north, as we have seen, and will continue with additional precipitation. Certainly spring flood potential conditions most heavily in the Red River Basin, the lower Missouri, Mississippi, and some in the Ohio River. Not as likely just yet in the Ohio River, but this will be contingent on upcoming precipitation events. The outlooks are sticking with likely warmer than average conditions in the late spring, summer. They've been projecting this continuing. They've not wavered from it except for maybe the theory or the potential amount. So we're waiting for that to happen. We'll have to watch this closely. This again, warmer temperatures do lead to higher crop water use, which is okay if you have the water available. If you're limited on the water, that leads to stress conditions. The outlooks do indicate some dryness in May in the east. We'll have to keep an eye on that, and we'll continue to watch for summer to see if any developing areas for the summer to go along. Again, a reminder of all of our partners. Our today's presentations and recorded presentations are available at the Regional Climate Center websites, also at climate.gov, the climate portal, and drought portal. Excuse me, at drought.gov, the drought portal. Links to our other partners and regional climate centers are available here. And contact information for any of the folks involved here. And we'll now open up for any questions people have.
And Dennis, Dennis, before you, this is Doug Cluck from NOAA. Before you answer any questions, one comment I would make is that where it is so wet right now, and if it continues to be so through May and even June, chances for above normal temperatures are more difficult simply because it's a little harder to evaporate all that water and keep it and go above normal in terms of temperatures. Not impossible by any means, but there's definitely a tendency to not be as warm. Now, it doesn't mean it won't be sticky and hot, but it won't be above normal temperatures necessarily. That's all.
And so now we're ready for questions.
Okay, at this time, I would remind participants if they have a question, they may press star and the number 1 on their telephone keypad. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster. Your first question comes from the line of a participant whose name we were not able to gather. Participant, your line is open. Please state your first and last name. Hello? Participant, we can hear you. Please state your first and last name.
Is it star 6 they need to push?
Star 1.
Star 1.
Your next question comes from the line of a participant whose name we were not able to gather. Participant, please state your first and last name. Your line is now open. Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
This is Nancy Garter from the Omaha World Herald. Can you hear me?
Yes, Nancy. Go ahead.
Oh, cool. Yes, so with the chance of above normal temperatures, when's the rough timing of when you see it shifting from colder to warmer than normal? Do you see a sudden switch where we really don't have a spring and go from this kind of miserable weather we've got now to a hotter summer weather? And really what I'm leading to is what's the chances in Nebraska and Iowa in particular of the drought kind of blowing up again once it starts getting warmer than normal? Thank you.
Understood. Yeah, understood. You know, what it's looking like right now, and you know, it's not reflecting in the 8 to 14 day outlook, or we're starting to see it maybe a little bit in the May outlook. It looks like sometime in the May to June time frame when things would turn around towards warmer than average conditions. Certainly, the resurgence of drought issues can always occur, and that is, you know, the additional warm temperatures and precipitation tends to fall off at that time of year. So we could have resurgence of drought conditions, but you know, if we're looking at a repeat of last year, certainly we would not expect to see a repeat of last year, because that is unlikely to have, you know, those types of years back to back. But some of those drought issues are carrying over that we will see, you know, as in the stream flows on the Platte. We're going to have some limited irrigation issues in Nebraska and those kinds of things. So we probably want to be looking for this, you know, maybe through the month of May we'd be seeing some kind of a shift over. I would not expect it to see a rapid change. There will be some nice transition times, but probably during the month of May, maybe latter May.
And then one last question. What do you see driving that vast area of warmer than normal temperatures? Thank you. I'm wondering if it's like soil, moisture, or what's the dominant reason? Thank you.
Now, part of it is soil moisture related. The southern plains are somewhat drier. And I'm not sure specifically the driver, but you know, I was showing the picture of the various models, and the models have all, except for one, been consistent in saying this warmer than average condition over a good part of the southern U.S. and into the central part of the U.S. I don't know exactly what the main driver focus of that is, other than, you know, some large-scale ridging in that area that would allow warmer temperatures and confine the cooler temperatures to further north.
Thank you very much.
Again, I would remind participants that if they'd like to ask a question, they may press star and the number 1 on their telephone keypad. Your next question comes from the line of Paul Lupisto. Your line is now open.
Thank you very much. And, very good presentation again today. Dennis, you mentioned last year was very unusual, or almost an anomaly, with what it turned out to in the severity of the drought. Given the history of the long-term records, 100-plus years of record keeping, when you see a spring conditions like we've had this year with below average temperatures and until recently much below normal precip, what does that tend to mean for June, July, August, for the summer period when we have a start of the year like we have this year?
Good question, Paul. That, you know, something I did for part of my PhD is we did look at this, and there is a persistence factor from spring into summer. That if you're cool and wet in the summer or in the spring, there is a better chance for that persisting into summer. That exists all across the Corn Belt and the Plains. I think it's a little bit stronger signal in the Plains areas. So, that would fit in the areas that are somewhat, and you need to look at this as a spring overall, not just an individual event. Look at the spring overall. So the places that are wet and cool, because those two tend to go together, like Doug was mentioning, there is a better chance of those persisting. If you're warm and dry through the spring, you have a better chance of those persisting. Largely, what the outlook and what you're referring to are not too much at odds with each other right now, because the wetter areas have been further north, that had lesser chances of being warmer than average. The drier areas generally have been further south, the areas that are more likely to stay warm.
And the other thing I'll add to that, Dennis, I guess is Doug again, is that this time of year, just to be as transparent as possible, it is the spring season where we have the most difficulty kind of pegging what's going to be happening in the next 3 or 4 months. So understand that too. This is not our strongest season on prediction.
And when I was mentioning the work we had done with persistence, we're talking improving on a 50-50 outlook. Maybe 65%, if you're cool and wet, you maybe have a 60-65% chance of persisting on into the summer as compared with just a 50-50 shot. So you've improved your odds, but they're still not huge odds.
Again, I would remind participants if they have a question, they may press star and the number 1 on their telephone keypad. There are no further questions on the phone lines at this time. I would now turn the call back to the presenters.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you all for attending today, and we are always, again, here to answer any questions. Hopefully we will be turning around here fairly soon so we can get away from the snow that I continue to watch outside my window and get on with our spring.
Oh, we'll be doing this again in May. On, what is it, the 21st?
16th.
16th, thank you.
16th. With a presenter to be determined.
Correct. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
This concludes today's conference call. You may now